All right, welcome to your very own deep dive. Today, we're going to jump into the world of 1980s India, specifically the infamous Tihar Jail.
Ooh, sounds intense.
You sent in a review of the Netflix series Black Warrant, based on the memoir of a real superintendent, Sunil Gupta, and let me tell you, this show is not your average prison drama.
Yeah, I was getting that sense from the review. Like, this is a real deep dive into what life was like in that jail.
Absolutely. The review paints a really vivid picture of Tihar back then, overcrowded, understaffed, corruption running rampant.
A total mess.
Yeah, complete chaos. And into this whole mess walks Sunil Gupta, a fresh out of law school guy who lands the job through the employment exchange. Talk about a fish out of water.
Right. Not exactly who you picture running a prison, huh?
Not at all. He seems more suited for a courtroom, not managing hardcore criminals.
And the review actually mentioned how casting a lesser-known actor, Zahan Kapoor, as Sunil added to that realism.
Makes sense. It reinforces that idea of an ordinary person thrust into an extraordinary situation.
Yeah, like anyone could find themselves in that position.
So, no stereotypical, Hollywood tough guy here.
Nope, just a regular guy trying to navigate a very tough situation.
And you can feel that internal conflict he faces throughout the series, wanting to uphold justice, but trapped in a system that seems built on corruption.
Yeah, that's highlighted really well in the review.
The reviewer talks about this scene where Sunil witnesses a brutal punishment that goes completely against his legal training.
Ooh, that's got to be tough to reconcile.
Totally. This clash between his ideals and the reality of Tihar forces him to question everything.
And on top of that, his colleagues are telling him to toughen up or get out.
Yeah, they basically told him to adapt or get lost.
That's rough.
Yeah.
It shows just how ingrained the corruption was.
And the supporting cast, the other jailers, are all depicted with such distinct personalities, according to the review.
Oh, I love when they do that. It really fleshes out the world.
It does. And they represent that hardened, cynical side of the system, making Sunil's struggle to hold on to his values even more powerful.
It's almost like the show sets up this battle between hope and despair.
Exactly. On one side, you have Sunil clinging to his ideals. On the other, you have these jaded veterans who've seen it all and lost their faith in the system.
Makes you wonder how he doesn't just give up.
It's a testament to his character, for sure. And remember, all of this is happening during a super turbulent time in India, the 1980s.
Right. A lot was going on back then.
The series doesn't shy away from showing how events like the rise of Punjab militancy and Indira Gandhi's assassination impacted the prison.
Oh, wow. So it's not just about the prison itself, but how it's connected to the outside world.
Exactly. And it gets even more intense. The review explains how, after Indira Gandhi's assassination, Tihar was flooded with politically charged inmates.
Oh, man, that must have been chaotic.
It was a powder keg. So Sunil wasn't just dealing with regular criminals, he was navigating this whole web of social and political unrest.
Makes his job 10 times harder.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It really emphasizes how a prison isn't isolated. It's a reflection of society, all the tensions and anxieties of the time.
Yeah, it becomes a microcosm of what's happening outside the walls.
Right. For Sunil, it's this crash course in the complexities of power, prejudice, and the very real human cost of all this conflict.
Heavy stuff.
And on top of all that, he was dealing with some seriously notorious figures. Charles Sobraj, the bikini killer, and Kashmiri separatist leader Makbul Pat.
No kidding. Those are some infamous names.
Mind-blowing that Sunil was face-to-face with these guys.
It shows just how high the stakes were. The review uses these high-profile inmates to really highlight the range of challenges Sunil faced.
It wasn't just about maintaining order. It was about managing this incredibly diverse and volatile population, all while trying to stay true to his own values.
Yeah, that's a lot to handle for anyone, let alone someone so new to the system.
It makes you wonder how he managed to survive, let alone actually make a difference in that environment.
Well, that's a story for another time, I guess, but it definitely sounds like he was in over his head from day one.
Oh, absolutely. But the fact that he navigated all of this and even managed to push for reforms is pretty remarkable.
I'm definitely curious to learn more about that. Stay tuned, folks.
We'll delve into that and more in our next deep dive. It's going to be a wild ride, so buckle up.
Can't wait.
I can only imagine the weight on his shoulders, managing all those different personalities and trying to keep things under control.
Right, and it wasn't just about keeping order.
Yet, the review also touched on these moral dilemmas he faced, especially with executions.
That's a heavy one. The series doesn't shy away from the realities of capital punishment.
It sounds like it really digs into that, how Sunil's views on it changed throughout the series.
Exactly. The review mentioned this one scene, the execution of Bila and Ranga, two notorious criminals.
Those names ring a bell.
They were pretty infamous back then. Anyway, this execution seems to have really impacted Sunil, made him confront the ethics of taking a life.
Wow, even within the law, that decision must weigh heavily on someone.
No doubt. It's like the series wants the viewer to really think about their own stance on capital punishment.
Not just as an idea, but the actual human cost, the emotional toll it takes on everyone involved.
Exactly. And this ties into a bigger theme. The review highlights prison reforms.
Ah, so it's not all doom and gloom. There's some hope for positive change.
Right. It seems like Sunil's experiences, his struggles with the brutality of the system, actually played a part in pushing for these reforms.
So we're seeing the dark side, but also the seeds of something better being planted.
Yeah, it makes you think, what kind of reforms did he actually fight for?
Did the review get into specifics?
Not really, but it did mention Sunil's efforts to improve living conditions in Tihar.
Make things a little more humane.
Exactly. There's this recurring theme of redemption and rehabilitation in the show.
Showing that he believed in second chances, even for those who committed serious crimes.
That's pretty powerful, especially in such a harsh environment.
It is. Did the review mention anything about how his colleagues reacted to his reform ideas?
You know, it hinted at some resistance, people stuck in their ways, not wanting things to change.
It's hard to shake up the status quo, especially in a place like Tihar.
For sure. It paints Sunil as kind of a lone wolf, battling against the tide of apathy.
A true David and Goliath situation, but he actually made some progress.
It's pretty inspiring, shows the power of one person's conviction.
The review called him a quietly gutsy hero, which I think fits perfectly.
Totally. He's not this loud, flashy figure. He's just quietly working towards what he believes in.
And that's often how real change happens. Small, persistent acts of courage.
Right. It's not always about grand gestures, but about that unwavering commitment to doing what's right.
Even when it feels impossible.
Exactly. And the show doesn't just focus on the big picture, the systemic issues.
Right. It also zooms in on the characters' personal lives.
Humanizes them, you know?
Yeah. The review mentioned we see Sunil's struggles, his relationship with his family, even some hints of romance.
It adds depth, reminds us that these people aren't just cogs in a machine.
That they have lives outside the prison walls and makes them more relatable, even the jailers.
Right. We see they have families, worries, things going on outside of work.
It's like that saying, everyone's fighting a battle you know nothing about.
Makes you think twice before judging, even if you don't agree with their choices.
And it's not just the jailers. The review briefly mentioned a tough journalist advocating for death row inmates.
Oh, interesting. Bringing in an outsider's perspective.
Yeah, someone who's also grappling with the issues of crime and punishment from a different angle.
Adds another layer to the conversation.
Makes you realize it's not just about what happens inside the prison, but how society views it all.
The role of media, public opinion, it all shapes how we perceive justice.
And the show, by including this journalist, seems to acknowledge that power of storytelling.
How it influences our understanding of these complex issues.
For sure. And speaking of storytelling, the review raved about the show's cinematography.
They really liked how it captured the atmosphere.
Yeah, they used phrases like textural tactility and visual depth.
Sounds like it's not just showing you Tihar Jail, but making you feel like you're there.
Experiencing the claustrophobia, the tension, the whole gritty reality.
That's what good filmmaking does, pulls you into the world of the story.
And I'm curious about how they handle the historical events woven into the narrative.
Right, we talked about Indira Gandhi's assassination, but there must be more.
Did the review mention any other specific events?
It mentioned a significant dramatic passage dealing with the politics of othering and demonizing communities.
So, exploring the social and political climate of the time, how it seeped into even a place like Tihar.
Exactly. It shows how those tensions and prejudices from the outside world affect everything.
It's a reminder that even in a seemingly isolated environment, those forces are still at play.
It's not just a story about a prison, it's about India in the 1980s.
And how all these different forces, personal, political, historical, collided in this one place.
It's that layered approach that makes Black Warrant stand out from your typical crime drama.
And even though the focus is mainly on the men, the inmates and jailers.
Right, it's a very male-dominated world.
The review did mention that women, while peripheral figures, still have a presence.
We see Sunil's mother, worried about his job, and hints of other female characters.
It's important to acknowledge their perspective. even if it's not the central focus.
They represent the families, the communities impacted by the prison system.
The ripple effects that extend beyond the individuals directly involved.
It adds another layer of complexity. It reminds us that it's not just about the men in that world.
It's about the web of relationships and consequences that connect them to everyone else.
And that's something the series seems to explore really well.
It's really impressive how they weave all these different threads together. Personal stories, political events, social commentary.
And make it all feel cohesive, engaging.
It sounds like Black Warrant really offers a deep and nuanced look at not just Tihar Jail, but Indian society as a whole during a very turbulent time.
Yeah, it's like a window into a specific time and place, but also speaks to these universal themes of justice and the human spirit.
And what strikes me is that even with all the darkness, the brutality depicted, there's still a sense of hope in the series.
It doesn't shy away from the harsh realities. Not at all. But the review makes it clear that the show also highlights those working towards change, like Sunil.
It's that glimmer of hope that makes his story so powerful.
It's not just about surviving a corrupt system, but actively trying to make it better.
He's proof that individuals can make a difference, even in the face of huge challenges.
And the review called him an unconventional hero, which I think is perfect.
I agree. He's not some larger-than-life figure, just a guy trying to do what's right.
And that's what's so inspiring about him, that quiet determination, that refusal to compromise.
It's a reminder that heroism can be found in everyday acts of courage, in those small but persistent efforts to do the right thing.
Absolutely. It's a powerful message, especially when we feel overwhelmed by the state of the world.
Like, you don't have to be extraordinary to make a difference.
Right. It's about finding courage in your convictions, in those everyday acts of kindness, and standing up for what you believe in.
Even when it feels like you're going against the tide.
Exactly. So as we wrap up our deep dive into Black Warrant, I want to leave you with this thought.
How can we, in our own lives, embody that spirit of quiet courage? How can we contribute to a more just world, even when faced with seemingly impossible obstacles?
That's the question the series seems to pose to all of us.
It's not just entertainment, it's a call to action.
A reminder that we all have a role to play in shaping a more just and compassionate world.
Black Warrant, based on this review, sounds like a must-watch for anyone who wants to engage with these complex issues.
And be inspired by a story of hope and resilience.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. It's been a fascinating journey.
Absolutely. And remember, even small acts of courage can create ripples of change.
That's something worth reflecting on. Until next time, keep diving deep and stay curious.
See you on the next deep dive.